You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
I can't believe that I'm actually going to agree with Hillary Clinton. 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. East Coast time. He's really great at being president, according to the Biden team. The other 18 hours, well, he's not very good, and he becomes erratic, and he has dementia. Hillary Clinton famously said, "What happens when you get that phone call at 3 a.m.? Listen.
It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. But there's a phone in the White House, and it's ringing. Something's happening in the world. Your vote will decide who answers that call. It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. Who do you want answering the phone?"
All right, well, Joe Biden's not answering the phone. Can you imagine what Bill Clinton would have gotten into if there had been cell phones that existed during his political career? He is the luckiest man on the planet that the technology to take pictures of your penis didn't exist when he was running for president of the United States.
The cover-up. President Biden was incapacitated for years. Welcome to Truth Thursday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview 2 and our X Spaces simulcast and everywhere else. Well, this is a matter of utmost urgency that strikes at the heart of our national security. The troubling questions surrounding President Joe Biden's health and its impact on America's nuclear command and control. Well, today we're honored to have Buzz Patterson, a former nuclear football carrier and military aide to that president being talked about right there, Bill Clinton. And he's going to help us pull back the curtain on what could be one of the most significant cover-ups in modern political history, folks. We're diving deep into the chain of command from the military aide entrusted with the codes that shadow the president to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and ultimately to the commander-in-chief himself. The American people deserve to know, was Joe Biden physically and mentally capable of executing the grave responsibilities tied to our nuclear arsenal? Well, reports of his declining health raised serious concerns about his ability to make split-second decisions that could determine the fate of our nations. What happens if the man at the top is incapacitated? Who steps in? And how's that decision made? Well, Buzz Patterson's firsthand experience gives us a rare glimpse into the high-stakes world of the nuclear football and the protocols that govern it. Today, we'll explore the military's role, the safeguards in place, and whether those safeguards are being undermined by political hacks and a lack of transparency. This isn't about politics. It's about the safety of our nation, the integrity of our leadership, and the trust we place in those sworn to protect us. Stay with us as we demand answers and uncover the truth. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Buzz Patterson is a former Air Force pilot, a popular speaker, a Red State columnist, and best-selling author. He speaks truth in his books, Dereliction of Duty, Reckless Disregard, War Crimes, and Conduct Unbecoming, and he's currently writing his fifth book about the Biden Pentagon. Buzz, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's been too many years, man.
Yeah. Hey, Rob. How you doing, brother? Nice to see you again.
I'm doing great. I hope things are well out there.
They are.
Let's give a little history lesson about the nuclear football for the folks first, I guess, before we dive too much further into this. When did this all start, and why, I guess?
Yeah, so there's always been a military aid for the president, Rob, going back to actually George Washington had the first military. And then in the 1950s, with the advent of nuclear weapons under Eisenhower, Eisenhower realized that we needed a strike capability with nuclear weapons, a PSYOP, and he developed the first strategic nuclear attack plan. It was initially called Dropkick, codenamed Dropkick. And then during the Cuban Missile Crisis under JFK, JFK realized that he needed to have his military aid and the nuclear football available in the PSYOP plan, which is now known as the nuclear football. So Kennedy realized he had to have military aid there 24/7, 365, and so that's when the president's military aid started carrying the nuclear football on a daily basis. And of course, it's evolved from there, but it's largely, believe it or not, still the same process, Rob.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as somebody that worked on building plans and updating the book, for my part of it, writing some of the ones that are currently in there, the PSYOP, folks, is not psychological operations. I know a lot of people are familiar with GWOT terminology and special ops and PSYOPs from that perspective, but it's SIOP, Single Integrated Operational Plan. We're really simple in the nuclear world because you want it to be as simple as possible so that mistakes don't get made, right, Buzz?
That's exactly right. And I tell you what, that's, we'll probably talk about this some more, Rob. The process, again, it's stayed pretty much the same over the decades. And we do that intentionally. We keep that human element in there. So basically all it takes, what it takes to launch is the president, the military aid then authenticates the president to the National Military Command Center, and then the National Military Command Center sends out the notifications from there, and keys start turning, and bombers get airborne, and submarines get ready to roll too. So we've intentionally kept it based on a human level, which I think is wise, and I think that we can see why when we see the incapacitation of Joe Biden. I mean, we don't want a laptop that can be hacked by anybody, certainly. But we have this process where we keep the human element in. If there's time, all the Joint Chiefs get on, and some of the unified syncs get on if there's time. I mean, we practiced all the scenarios everywhere where we had 5 minutes to where we had 20 minutes. So it just depended on what the threat was inbound. And that's how we based on just how wide to spread our net in terms of any kind of conversation with the president. But we are prepared just to do it him straight to the NMCC through me. So that was worst case scenario, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. During the Biden administration, and at the last segment of the show, I'm going to show a clip that shows him at the beginning, just before he took office, and in the middle, and then at the end. But during this whole time, you and I are people that we watch the national security stuff. We're kind of observers of that on a daily basis. What did you see that were indicators to you that the average citizen wasn't ever probably going to figure this out on their own, but those of us that know the national security process should be concerned?
Well, with Biden, I saw, very early on, actually, it didn't take me long to figure out that the guy was cognitively despaired, in some form or fashion. I don't think I realized just how serious it was, but it struck me that the guy, I was always concerned about Bill Clinton, basically, and his emotional state and his mental state. And so that's where the human element comes in. What I had to do, Rob, is I had to tell myself, if I get an order from Clinton, and I don't think it's legal, or he's not in a good state of mind, or he's incapacitated. So I was just going to tell the NMCC he's incapacitated. And that's how I resolved it as a Christian. If I'm going to be part of killing 300,000 people, I want to make sure we're doing the exact right thing for all the right reasons. Now, but I also committed myself to if he was, he's the man, and if he was in a good mental state, emotional state, and he said fire, I was going to help him fire. So that was the thing. Now, I never felt like Biden had that capacity, Rob. I didn't think that Biden. I always really felt for his military aides. I don't know any of the guys and girls doing it now. I'm far too removed from that, but I always felt really bad for his military aides, thinking, I faced this kind of internal, challenge when I was there. I can't imagine working for that guy, Biden, and having him do something rash, like just decide to fire something at, and think he was Russian, he sent it to Rwanda or something, that kind of thing could conceivably happen. Yeah. So he was never in the state, I don't think 100%. And then toward the end, and I'll raise this too, Rob. I don't know how. I have no idea who had the nuclear codes. I mean, the president's supposed to have them. President Clinton kept them in his pants pocket, rubber banded to his credit cards. So I always knew they were in there until the one time he lost them. We can get into that too. But I always felt like for the military aides and Biden, who has the codes? I don't believe Biden felt capable of having them. He slept 3/4 of the day. So I always assumed it was probably the chief of staff or somebody in a close proximity, but not actually Biden, so that the chief of staff could probably intervene, which is not the way it's supposed to work. That is not how it's written down in regulations.
The human being in the presidential office is the only person authorized to do it, even though, and we can tell this, the vice president's team has the capability with them all the time, but unless the president is incapacitated and can't do it, the vice president has no power to do that, and he has to become the president, essentially.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
in
right.
order to do it, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the vice president has 2 military aides that rotate, but they're not 24/7, right? They go home, they have real lives, but they also had access to the football with the VP. So the only way that we activate the vice president's football, and we talked about doing this once before when Trump was going to go under anesthesia for knee surgery, we talked about doing that, and that there's all kinds of legal ramifications you have to jump through to do that. But yeah, in the event that the president was assassinated, for example, God forbid, then the vice president's football goes active, and the vice president's military aid is the military aid.
Yeah, I think we had to do that when Reagan had to have surgery after the assassination attempt on him. Vice President Bush assumed the duties of the presidency under the 25th Amendment. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct. And his football kicked in at that time, and they quickly, when Reagan was up and about and back into being his normal self, they cut it back over to the president and the military aid. So. So that's how it's supposed to work. It worked pretty well with Reagan. That's how it's supposed to work. I don't know what would have happened under the Biden administration, honestly. Again, also, then you're thinking about giving the backup football to Kamala Harris. And, that's another person not of sound mind and body. So I don't know.
You are not the first person. You are not the first person to use that sentence in a conversation with me over the last few weeks. I've been interviewed a couple times about Biden's mental state, and that people know that I was in the Nuke Ops Division on the Joint Staff, and they're going, "Wait a minute," and I go, "Well, the process is the vice president has to become the president, whether you like it or not." Like you mentioned, you can't. Military officers cannot be partisan. That's why it's so dangerous to see what was happening in the Department of Defense and all the services and the service academies with this whole Marxist indoctrination stuff.
Right.
You cannot be partisan when you're in military uniform. And the mill aid with the president is the exact reason. If the lawful order is happening and it's the president of the United States giving it, you're bound, you're duty bound and oath bound to follow that order. Well, we're going to have to take a break here in a second, Buzz, at our first break. But when we come back, I have to ask you to tell the story about President Clinton losing the codes, because that's just below the threshold of where these mill aides the last 4 years were at. I think they were above that threshold with a constant incapacitated president mentally, and we'll talk about that too. But we got to hear the story about Bill Clinton losing the codes. We'll be right back with Buzz Patterson, New York Times best-selling author, retired Air Force pilot, and nuclear football carrier. right here on the Rob Maness Show.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. Unfortunately, our little clip there didn't have audio with it for some reason, but it's a clip, an interview from the podcaster Sean Ryan Buzz, and he's interviewing a former military officer that happened to be standing next to the bag carrier one day at the White House, and asked him to. He tells the story about how he asked the aide. He said, "What do you do if somebody comes up and says, 'I want to hold that'?" And he handed it to him and then explained to him everything that was in it. And the last part of that clip is the most important one. Is the guy tells Sean, he goes, "Yeah," and the mill aide said that the book's kind of got a Waffle House style menu type selection capability with it, and that's the one piece that I think I can positively confirm about that clip. So I apologize, folks, for not being able to play that clip. But the point is that, and we talked about it a little bit in the first segment, is that the technology is as simply human and processes is as simply human as we can possibly make it, right?
It's absolutely down to the human basic level. And I think, and I have to agree with what whoever Sean's military aide he was talking to was, but yeah. So and I've said this before openly, so I don't have a problem talking about it again. So the actual, there's actually a fold out, and I liken it to a Denny's menu. That's a fold out laminated strike chart that has all the possible targeting and the potential deaths. Believe it or not, it's that black and white. So it would get down to a specific area and say, okay, 300,000 will die here. But it also gave you the spectrum. So it went from everything from, a single tactical nuke to full blown Armageddon. So so you got to keep it simple for the president, right? So I would go in once a quarter and just make sure that President Clinton understood the process. I'd talk him through it. I'd say, do you have any questions about anything specifically? And sometimes he would, and he would talk about, what do I do in the situation? And I would tell him how we were going to do that. And, but mostly for the most part, Clinton was up to speed. So, but you got to keep it simple. I mean, when, as you know, Rob, when missiles are flying at us, the one decision maker has only got maybe 10 minutes to figure out what our retaliation is going to be, and you got to boil it down to just the basic facts. Like, okay, sir, here are the targets. These are our estimated casualties. This is the estimated payload. What do you want to do? So it's very simple, and we do that again, Rob, intentionally. We want to keep that human element involved so that, again, nothing can be hacked. I mean, human beings can be hacked, but nothing technologically can be hacked. And the process flows very simply. down to the NMCC, and then the NMCC goes out, as you know, and sends whatever directives they need to send. So things start happening. So yeah, it's simple, and I know that some of the other countries don't do it our way. I know that Russia and South Korea are computerized, because I've been around their military aides and talked to them a little bit. But we don't do it that way. And I think as a God-fearing nation, I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you, man. So as a mill aide, you understand the stresses and the pressure that the aides are going through, that are carrying that bag every single day, 24/7. You had a bedroom in the White House, right?
Correct.
Somewhere. Wasn't the Lincoln bedroom, was it?
No, I wish. No, they stuck me down. So the President's Emergency Operations Center is down. It was built in World War II by Roosevelt as kind of a bomb shelter for the senior staff, and we still use it. I mean, it's vaulted, and that's where the POC is, emergency operations guys and girls, and that's where my bedroom was. It felt like sleeping on a Navy ship. It was noisy as hell, clanging all night long. It's like, it was very austere, just a little single bed, a TV set. But ironically, when 9/11 happened, Bush was in Air Force One. Cheney went to the POC and got closed up, and he was sleeping in my old bed. So that's where he hung out for a couple days. So that's where I was 24/7, man, and had a direct line to the president, and I had a classified line in my bedroom, and I had a very limited group of channels I could watch on TV, so I watched a lot of In Living Color.
Yeah, you don't have very many close friends that you stay in contact with very often through the day.
No, you know what? The only close friends I really had, other than my then fiance, now wife of 28 years, was the other military aides. So, I mean, there are 5 military aides. There are probably 6 now with Space Force. I don't know that to be a fact. But when I was there, it was five of us, one from each of the services. And then they rotate the senior aide every 2 years. So it was the Air Force term when I got there. So I arrived as a major, and I was still the senior military aide after about 6 months. So, in fact, Clinton promoted me when I was there at St. Thomas on the Virgin Islands, but that's a whole nother story. But that's a great place. My closest friends were my fellow mill aides, all great guys and girls, and I'm still to this day close to almost all of those. So all of those guys, they're all exceptional people in their own right. Stellar, Army combat vets, tank commanders. The Navy guy was a submariner who ended up being the CNO. John Richardson, he was a fellow mill aide. The Coast Guard guy was awesome, still a great friend. So those are my best friends, and I didn't really have a lot of time to hang out. I mean, I would actually get home for about 3 days a month to see my fiance and get some suits into the dry cleaners in uniform. Yeah, so I would, and I kept all of my clothes at the White House because I had to change on a frequent basis, and I had to change, make sure that I matched whatever President Clinton was wearing. So if he was going to the golf course, I was wearing golf attire. If he was going to jog, I was jogging with him. Of course, evening events, I'm wearing my uniform for the most part. Coat and tie the rest of the time. So if I was just doing business in the White House, it was coat and tie. So you guys are under, and gals are, you're under this extreme pressure already, and President Clinton loses the codes. A, how did you find out? B, what's the process when something like that happens? Well, I talk about this in dereliction of duty. So I every once in a while, once a quarter, I'd go in and talk to him and brief him and answer any questions he might have on the process. And this one particular morning was in January. I remember it distinctly because it was the same day the Monica Lewinsky affair hit the national press. And I was walking by. I was the first person on President Clinton's schedule, 7:00 in the morning, walking by Betty Curry's desk, who was his secretary. She wasn't into work yet. walked by her desk and saw the Washington Post headline that says, sex scandal rocks White House. I go, because I knew Monica and I knew the whole deal. And so then I walk into the Oval Office and there's Clinton. He's behind the desk and he's got his head in his hands. Eyes are bloodshot. He's been up all night. He knows he's been caught. He knows he's been caught. And I just said, sir, I know this is not a great time to come in here to talk, to brief you about anything. If I could just check before I leave, if you have the nuclear codes, because that was one thing we had to do. The Pentagon asked us every quarterly, just make sure the president's got them, which every president has had forever until Bill Clinton. And he goes, well, Buzz, I think I don't have them. I'll try to get them back to you. And I said, okay, I'll come back this afternoon and see if they're upstairs in the residence. I even called up, talked to the valets and said, can you guys look around looking for this little, credit card size document? And they couldn't find it. So I went back that afternoon, Rob, and he said, he confessed that he had in fact lost the nuclear codes. Now I asked him most importantly, I said, okay, sir, how long has it been? I said, has it been days, weeks, months? Because conceivably it could have been 3 months since the last time I checked. And he goes, I can't remember. So, I'm at this point, all he cared about was making sure it didn't get to he just promised me this won't get to the press. Because, on top of the Monica Lewinsky thing, this would have killed him, right? So I called the Pentagon, and they were, as you can imagine, I said, hey, guys, we got a problem. The president's lost the codes. And they go, this had never happened. So there was no actual process in place to do it like on a dime. But they did. And so by that evening, we had a new set, which I took to President Clinton, and every single bomber base, nuclear submarine base, missile silo had to get the same codes for the authentication process. So, the logistics of that are mind-boggling. And that's why I called my book Dear Election of Duty, because he honestly just didn't care. He didn't care. He was more concerned about the press impact.
Yeah. Wow. Well, let me ask you this, that's pretty high stress level for the military aid right there. That's as high as I've ever personally seen it, heard about it. Talk the audience through, if you can, or think you can, what do you think these military aides under Biden, what kind of stresses were they under? This must have been enormous because they had to know he was incapacitated, right?
Absolutely. And let me just take a step back to, honestly speaking, in my time, and I'm sure for the guys and girls today, there's a lot of stresses in the military aid. Not only are you in charge of the football, and you go everywhere the president goes, but you're also in charge of the classified assets that we always have scenarios to evacuate and get the POTUS out of harm's way. So we have helicopter assets, fixed wing assets. I'm not going to tell you how many different scenarios we have because that's classified, but we have several scenarios where we could use. And so the military aid is the quarterback for that. So on all the trips that I went on, I was always in the back of my mind knowing the football is the most obvious thing. But I've still got to make a call. I've got to make a weather call. I've got to make, Secret Service guys, they take care of the president and they get him safely away. And then it's the military aid's ball game. So talk about stress. And there were a couple of times we had significant threats overseas. And I thought, okay, do I need to start launching stuff? And we always would do it for training. We never had to do it on purpose, thankfully. But so the military has that. The military aid also kind of oversees the Air Force One crews, the Marine One crews. Camp David is all Navy. The drivers are all Army. White House Communications Agency is multi-service, but it's mostly Army guys. The cooks are all Navy. So, especially when you go on the road, the military aid becomes the daddy rabbit for all of that, in addition to having the football chained to your side 24/7, in your hotel room. And, it was a very stressful 2 years. I wouldn't change a day, Rob, and I wouldn't do it again. Let me put it that way. Now, I would, however, do it for Trump, but I wouldn't do it for anybody else. So, And I think the guys and girls that are probably Trump has right now are probably just pigs and shit. They're probably really happy to be there, enjoying it. And the people that work for Biden probably will have PTSD for the rest of their lives. I mean, it's simply that, that's what it is.
Yeah, and we got to take another break, Buzz. When we come back, we'll see a little clip. Hopefully it'll work this time. The audio will, about the cover-up, because that's one of the reasons I wanted to get your take on all this stuff that's going on, because nobody better to ask than somebody that's been right there by the president's side at this level to have an understanding of what the heck was going on. We'll be right back with Buzz Patterson, author of Dereliction of Duty and Presidential Military Aid to President Clinton.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Every one of you lying pieces of trash in the mainstream media covered up for Joe.
Sharper than anyone I've spoken to.
The president has no impairment.
He's sharp, he's focused, he's bright.
This is a very sharp president.
I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline.
This version of Biden is the best Biden ever.
Anybody in the mainstream media who still calls themselves journalists, who says we didn't see it, we didn't know there was cognitive decline and possibly this cancer we didn't know any of this. The White House lied to us. Even though they're all in bed with them, they chummy up at the damn dinners all the time. Some of them are dating some of them. I mean, give me a frickin' break.
Yeah, but I don't think he's capable. I know he's capable. I see results.
We know Alzheimer's dementia patients can get irritable, obviously lose train of thought, stumble around, weird body movement. The radiation and other treatment for prostate cancer that he has can make all those even worse. And look what we saw from Joe. Mumbling, bumbling, getting angry like that at the camera, the shuffling, where am I? Because he has both.
Yeah.
Democrats and the media all conspired to lie to all of us.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and it's Truth Thursday, folks, and we're talking about the cover-up that you just heard about. You can just see the tip of the iceberg there of how widespread and deep this cover-up was. Government officials, elected politicians, corporate mainstream media, aides, those kinds of folks, appointees, all of them were covering up Joe Biden's inability to be the president of the United States for years. And my guest today is Buzz Patterson, who used to carry the nuclear football, was a military aide to President Clinton, has run for Congress, is an author of 4 books, New York Times bestselling author, I got to say that, and he's in the process of writing his 5th book, and it's about the Biden administration in the Pentagon and stuff. So, Buzz, we got a question over in the live audience. Let's go ahead and take that question first before we dive into this. Go ahead, Shell is our host over there. Go ahead, Shell.
We have cookies, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you both for your service. Question I had is, how did you get selected, or how does one get selected to carry the football?
That's an excellent question, and I get it a lot. It's a job that you can't apply for. So, I mean, I knew the position. I was a squadron operations officer. at Travis Air Force Base at the time, and the White House reached out and called me and said that they had selected me as one of 6 to come to D.C. to interview. And so you can't, to this day, you cannot apply for the job. The White House goes to the Department of Defense. Department of Defense will then submit a number of nominees. I was one of the 6 for the Air Force, and then they flew me out to Washington, D.C. And this was the fall of 1995, and interviewed me. 3-day process. First day is all 100%. First day is all background check. They knew my life better than I did. They had talked to my elementary school friends. I mean, it was really pretty amazing, actually, what the footwork that they had done before I even got there. So that's how it worked for me. I'll have to also tell you guys in complete honesty and full transparency here. When I got offered the position after the couple of days of interviews, they asked me why I wanted the job, and I said, quite frankly, I don't know that I do. I'm flying around the world, going to be a squadron commander here momentarily, dating my now wife, and so I said, I'm not really sure that I do. You guys called me, and so I went back to my hotel room and thought, okay, that's that. I'll never get that position. I was going to catch the red eye back to San Francisco. I was at Travis Air Force Base at the time. And the phone rang in my hotel room and said, we know you said that you weren't sure if you want it, but if we offer it to you, will you take it? And I reached out to my girlfriend and said, what do you think? And she says, you can't say no to the White House. And I said, so I called him back and said, yep, I'd be proud to take it. And the next morning they had me in the Oval Office meeting President Clinton the very next morning. So it was off and running from there. But yeah, you can't apply for it. I, to this day, do not know who put my name in the hat. But it changed my life forever. Again, I would do it. I wouldn't do it again, but I loved every moment of it. I mean, it was a tremendous experience. Tremendous.
Yeah, it was probably your wing commander. I got to do it once, but not every wing commander gets to do it. They have to get a phone call too out of the blue. You can't go shopping.
Well, that makes sense. My wing commander liked me too, so that does make sense.
Yeah, so he probably he or she got asked out of the blue to them too, more than likely. It worked the same way I saw. So the cover-up, Buzz. I mean, use your expertise to talk us through how would this work when you have the military officer aide. I mean, folks, in the U.S. Armed Forces, officers are they're honest as the day is long to a fault. For the most part, at this level, we're talking major, lieutenant colonel level. They are ethical. They're extremely hardworking. They got to this position because they're at the top, the pinnacle of that rank and performance level in those areas, plus their technical expertise. You were a pilot, of course. So I just can't. I have trouble being on the end that worked the NMCC part, the National Military Command Center piece in this nuclear chain of command. It's difficult for me to envision having a military aide that would go along with this cover-up, but I can't figure out how they would do it and do this level of cover-up for so long and not have them involved.
Yeah, well, I guarantee you, no doubt in my mind, Rob, that the military aides knew. And people criticize me for, not coming forward about Monica Lewinsky. And it's like, I wasn't there to serve the guy. I was there to serve the office.
Right.
And really, quite frankly, in terms of my sanity, that's the only way I could get through. I didn't. I saw very early on that President Clinton was not a very qualified and capable commander in chief, for example, primarily. Right. And then I saw the Paula Jones stuff, the Monica Lewinsky stuff. I was there for all of that. But I kept telling myself that, it's not incumbent upon me to say anything unless he breaks the law. But because I'm here to serve the office. It could have been Clinton. It could have been Bush Sr. It could have been Obama. And I think that's the mindset you have to be the military aide. Obviously it's an apolitical position. You're there again to make sure that the leader of the free world and the commander in chief has everything that he or she needs to be the commander in chief. And I always just I was able to say that's the way I should be approaching this, and that's how I did it. And I guarantee you, the aides during Biden saw it all. I mean, you live with these people, Rob. So I live with the Clintons. I had like I said, I had an office and in a bedroom, and every vacation they went on, I went on with them. I was there when they took Chelsea to her freshman year at Stanford. I was there when Bill got in trouble with Monica and Hillary sent Bill up to Camp David with Chelsea to be, to have that father-daughter relation communication. I was there for all of it. So you cannot not see it. You know what I mean? You cannot not see it. So I guarantee you the guys and girls with Biden saw it, and they were like, they probably talked about it every single day. And I guarantee, so we also had this kind of tight network with the Secret Service guys and girls. And we talked to those folks because you're hanging out with them almost every single day, all day. So you get to know those people really, really well. And they would always, we would talk, right? And then, but then we always realized that wasn't our job. Our job was to serve the office. And I feel for and I speculate being Biden's military aide, if and when the balloon went up, what would I do with Biden?
Yeah, and because what you're talking about with Bill Clinton isn't an inability for him to be able to make a decision or to communicate. That's a different perspective. I firmly agree with you. You not talking about the personal stuff with Lewinsky and that was exactly the way I would have handled it too. But in this case, Buzz, the man can't do it. That's the part that I'm struggling with, because it makes me wonder, and we'll talk about this in the next segment too, in the last segment too. It makes me wonder what were the backup processes that they had to put in place to satisfy the military side to go, yes, we can still do this with this president. If they were going down the road of I'm serving the office, not the man, that's great. But in this case, he actually couldn't do it. That gap right there, I think, is significant, isn't it?
It is significant, and thank God I didn't have to deal with that. But I'm sure, as you know, Rob, the inner workings of the NMCC and stuff. I'm sure that there was all kinds of talk arounds and like this, what if scenarios. So the president's going to be, he's going to be out from 8 o'clock tonight till 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Who are we going to call? You got to call a military aide first, right? But who's the military aide going to call? I could always pick up the phone and talk to President Clinton directly 24/7, and he would pick up on the first ring. I don't think Biden would pick up on the first ring, if at all. And so if I was a military aide faced with that communication challenge, there had to have been a workaround. And I'm just assuming here and speculating, but I assume it was they had somehow involved the chief of staff and had him in the loop. He would take the place of Biden until he got Biden on the horn, is what I'm assuming happened.
Yeah, but what if he was on medication and that was making him sleep for 12 hours? I mean, that's the thing.
And that's think about that, and that's why you used to carry nukes. That's the internal struggle. If I am told to do this and kill 300,000 people, I have to be convinced that he is of sound mind and body. And exactly. I don't think I could ever have been convinced with Biden. So I would have said, immediately, sir, I don't think this is a good idea, or let's get somebody else in this discussion. The SecDef, whatever, anybody, because when I was there, Rob, we didn't even include the SecDef in the nuclear communications. He was out of the loop. It was all warfighting. Yeah. It was all warfighting commanders and the president.
Yeah. If the chairman was included, he wasn't a decision maker. We got to take our last break. When we come back, we'll show a little clip of Biden at the beginning, the middle, and the end, and talk some more about this discussion about what was being done to make sure the country was still safe. With Buzz Patterson, nuclear football carrier, author, and just a great American. We'll be right back.
And so I guarantee you, I will be totally transparent in terms of my health and all aspects of my health. And when it comes to Donald Trump versus me, just look at us, okay? That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer. I've laid every bit of the record out. Hadn't hidden a thing. You ought to ask Trump for his, okay? I laid it all out.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show here on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. It's Truth Thursday, folks, and we're talking about the cover-up of Biden's incapacitating whatever is going on with him physically and mentally almost throughout his entire presidency, from what I could tell. And that first clip you just saw there was from September of 2024, so he hadn't been elected yet, of September 2020. He hadn't been elected yet, and in the middle in 2022, and then at the end in 2024 in that debate that was just resulted in the media finally starting to tell the truth about this. And my guest today is Buzz Patterson. He's a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, pilot, and author of 4 books, 5th one on the way, New York Times bestselling author, former congressional candidate, and nuclear football carrier. So very experienced and knowledgeable about this subject. Well, Buzz, we got some more questions from the live audience. Let's go ahead and take one before we get too far into this segment and the end of the show. Go ahead, Sean.
We have Lucky Dog, sir.
Thank you, sir. The question I have is about, I guess, Trump's term. For his first term, it was said that Milley tried to keep the football away from him. I mean, maybe that was a wild rumor or something like that, but do you know if that's true? And second, is that possible that he could have done that? But I'll just let you answer.
Hey, Buzz, you're muted.
Am I good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So, yeah, in terms of the physicality, in fact, the nuclear football is actually a physical piece that has to accompany the president 24/7. That's impossible. Now, that being said, Milley did try to inject himself into the process. And again, that's not his position. He's not in that chain of command. He's an advisor at best, as Rob said earlier. He's an advisor. And I do know that he had communications with the Chinese saying he wouldn't allow Trump to do anything nuclear wise as long as he was the chairman. And so again, that's totally out of the of the chain of command, and it's not supposed to work that way. So I know Milley did it to Trump, sort of theoretically, and I don't know if anybody did that with Biden. I would hope, but again, it's not the chief's call. It's the war fighters and the NMCC that make that call.
Yeah, the NMCC's got an area that I'll just refer to as the operations desk, and it's run by a one-star and a team of about 30 officers and enlisted personnel, and that's where the connections are made to the president, the mill aid, to the combatant commanders in this type of communication and everything. That's so right. It's my understanding Milley had a meeting with the teams that did that, so it probably would have been 4 1-stars and about 120 people, and told them no nuclear command and control events occur without me being involved. You come get me first, and that's illegal. That's against the law.
100%. 100%, Rob. And I'll tell you, that desk, that ops desk. When I first got the job, I spent a couple of days before I got into the position, just hanging out with those guys and girls and communicating to see, what it was like on their end. So that by the time I got to the White House, I knew exactly who I was going to be talking to on the other end. I obviously didn't want any surprises there. And so I think, again, the Pentagon got pretty political after I left and you left. And I can see people kowtowing to Milley. And again, that's illegal. That's not how the process works. It was never intended to work like that. And you're just adding another layer into a very time-critical decision-making process. Again, depending on where the missile is shot from, we're looking at just a handful of minutes. And there's no time to get Milley on the horn and have him try to figure out the geopolitical nuances of anything, frankly. And again, having Pete Hegseth, this is just a little political statement, but having Pete Hegseth in the position, I hope they go back and take a really hard look at Milley and prosecute the guy for, I think, was just malpractice in terms of being our chairman.
Yeah, at least do a grade determination on the guy for what we just talked about there. That and the phone call to the Chinese counterpart, which is not out of the ordinary. But what's out of the ordinary is what he said. He said that he said, "I'll call you if we're going to war against you." That is what's out of the ordinary.
Yeah, that's out of the ordinary. Yeah.
Do you suspect that Milley inserted himself into the Biden administration's nuclear command and control chain too? I mean, the precedent was there of him doing that, and he was the chairman. I suspect that was probably part of the workaround, wasn't it?
I think it probably was, and I think Lloyd. I think that also I think probably Lloyd Austin did as well. I think I think you're, and I know that General Brown, who was the previous chairman, that Air Force guy that Trump got rid of. Thank God, that guy was worthless. But so I think that what they did, they just added more layers. Probably that was the workaround. And I tell you, that makes the military aid's job a million times harder,
And what makes it dangerous for the country is what you said earlier, Buzz, and that is that it increases the amount of time it takes to get the order to the forces that have to respond, which are all the way around the world in some cases, and very far from Washington, D.C. or wherever the president's at. And seconds count. Seconds matter. That's why it's unethical for that process to be tampered with or done in a way that folks like you and I, who are the experts in that business, have laid out for decades that worked very effectively. Well, we got one more hand up in the audience. Let's go ahead and take that question before we get to the end of the show. Go ahead, Shel.
We have Liz, sir.
Good afternoon, Colonel and Colonel. My question, and it may not apply, I don't know for sure, but to you with Bill Clinton, but were you informed of any medical outliers for Bill Clinton and in effect for Joe Biden's people? Because Joe Biden had 2 aneurysms in 1988 and blood clots. And then again in 2003, he had issues with heart based on blood emergency gallbladder surgery. He had heart, which could lead to strokes and on and on. Were you all made aware of their health at all and ongoing health?
Intimately, actually. So the White House doctors and the White House nurses are all military. And the head doctor was Navy at the time I was there. I talked to those folks all the time. You know, Clinton had some underlying conditions, primarily blood pressure and cholesterol. It was a heart thing with him. And we kept him on the, at one point in time, he used to go out and jog a lot, but he was not really jogging with any intent. He was just it was kind of a political statement more than anything else. But we were very concerned we were aware of it. We were concerned. No matter where the president goes, there's a doctor and a nurse on right there with me. And 24/7 in the White House, the doctors and nurses were on call too. So we were always well informed and well plugged in to his health. And if anybody believes that they weren't doing the same thing and more with Biden, they're fools. Those folks knew precisely what his health issues were, and I also suspect his doctor, who basically covering up the whole thing. I think the doctor's medical malpractice personally, but I was very well aware of Clinton State.
Yeah, Biden didn't have a military doctor like Trump and all the other presidents I'm aware of. Did he?
He was retired military. So it went. Okay. So he was the same doctor that Biden had as VP. He was an Army guy. And when Biden got elected, the guy was retired Army and came back to work for him. So he was retired 2006. When I was there, we had three doctors. A Navy 2006, an Air Force 2006, and a Army 2006. But the Navy lady was in charge. So she was the president's physician, basically. But the other two bailed her out frequently. Yeah, and Clinton didn't have any secrets really in terms of that. What he did in his personal time was a secret, but his actual, being the president and his health was, we knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah. Well, we're coming towards the end of the show, Buzz. I want to give you a chance to talk about your new book, if you can, without revealing too much, so people will still go out and buy it. And folks, you can find all of Buzz's books at Amazon. Just type Buzz Patterson in, takes you right to a great page. It's got them all there and everything. But the Coverup and accountability, Buzz. I mean, take your mill aid hat off for a second and put your national leader hat on for me. And I want to get your perspective on what level and type of accountability has to occur to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. I mean, the truth is the mill aid probably told the NMCC and the leadership in the uniformed services should have been raising this issue with the Secretary of Defense, who is obligated under the Constitution and the 25th Amendment to address an incapacitated president and didn't. So who should be held accountable in this process? What type of accountability should we look for in order to set the country back on the right track in this area?
Yeah, you know what? I just think we need, as citizens, we need to demand that whoever we elect to the presidency going forward is our commander in chief, and that's their primary responsibility. Whether it's Democrat, Republican, Independent, I really don't care. Their primary responsibility is our national security, and that's how I've always looked at it. So the checks and balances, the way it's supposed to work, Rob, is just how you laid it out. That's the way it's supposed to work. But politics has invaded the Pentagon as well, as you and I know. And the politics has gotten involved. That's how people like Milley get to power. That's how people like Lloyd Austin are selected to be SecDef. And it's all political. And I think Trump, through Pete Hegseth, I got to slap him on the back. Putting a warfighter in that position, a major, but also one with warfighting capability, who's not coming off of some Raytheon board somewhere, or Boeing or Lockheed McDonnell, whatever, to put a war fighter in that position and actually communicate with the warriors again. You know, as the commander, there's nothing more effective than being able to talk to your people and convey a message, convey a mission, convey enthusiasm, whatever it takes.
That's
and
right.
I think show up in the morning at 6 a.m. and do push-ups, just
exactly
do anything.
Right, man.
Yeah,
exactly right. Well, Buzz,
okay.
Unfortunately, we run out of time, and we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much. I got to get you back a lot sooner this time than the last time we had you on the show. I look forward to the book coming out. When it comes out, we're going to do a show on it so we can help promote that thing and help you out. So thank you for your service, sir. Memorial Day is coming up. I know, like you, we're all going to be praying for those who we've lost in combat and their families. And that means also Monday, no show. But Tuesday, we'll have Army Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gobb talking about the Afghanistan debacle, because I think he helped put the original plan together that could have been effective. I'll see you then on the Rob Maness Show.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.